What I really need is a robe and a gavel in a courtroom so I can make my judgments in style. You're going to have to settle for a little bit less than that. Hello, welcome to my channel, another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and today I'm doing my mid-year judgment, my top 5 bad books and my top 5 good books. I was tagged by a number of good folk in the mid-year freakout tag, and I thought about doing that, but I've been putting off that freakout tag for a while because the questions just didn't really float my boat. And then I've seen a couple other people just talk about their best of the year so far. So I decided just to do that modification. I know Brian at Bookish did a video like this, but I just have a little bit of a different take. I want to talk about some bad books and some good books. And I had a big list of runners-up, but I'm not going to mention the runners-up because I think that would make this video just a little bit too long. But just a quick overview of what I have read. I have read 25 print books, 39 digital books, 30 audiobooks, 19 novellas, and 10 books that I DNF'd. That's a pretty substantial amount of books. But what are the bad and the good? We'll start with the bad. At number 5 is Anxious People by Fredrik Backman, originally published in 2019. And this is a novel translated from the Swedish. Or was it Norwegian? One of those two languages. And it is the story of a very inept bank robber. A bank robber walks into a cashless bank and demands about $2,000 or whatever cash currency they were using. And of course, this is a cashless bank, so no cash available. And the bank robber flees into a home showing of an apartment. There's an apartment for sale. And the bank robber takes everyone hostage. And this was really just a rather droll, dry, it was trying to be funny kind of book. And it had its moments, but mostly it was just missing its mark all over the place. And I just did not like it very much. And it was selected for my in-person book group. I think one of the reasons it was selected is that my public library has this thing called book bags, where you have like 12 books in a bag, and you can hand them out to your book group. And the moderator of the group tends to pick a lot of books from these book bags, which is a lot of popular modern fiction, which just does not float my boat. Number 4, again a book for my in-person book group, and that was The Great Alone by Kristin, originally published 2018. I have read a previous book by her, The Nightingale, and while that book was pretty good in most places, I had problems with The Nightingale, but not too many problems. The Great Alone, I had a whole hell of a lot more problems with. This one, it talks about moving to Alaska. There is it's set in the 70s, or begins in the 70s, or the early 80s. And there is a father with PTSD back from the Vietnam War, and he is a little bit nutsy Fagin, and he drags his family out to Alaska, to a cabin he inherited from one of his war buddies who died in combat. And this cabin has no electricity. It has no running water, but it is next to a stream in Alaska. And if you were to ask me a vision of hell, that would be living in an off-the-grid cabin in Alaska. under those conditions, where your main source of food is hunting and fishing. Now, what Kristin Hannah does well is describe the landscape. You get a good feel of what it would be like to live in Alaska at that time in those conditions. And as I said, it would be a living hell. So I was not digging it that much. But the main problem comes at the end. In novels, sometimes bad things happen to good characters, and that moves the story along. But what really pokes my ire is when that good character who has had something bad happen, all of a sudden, it's a miracle! That bad condition mostly just goes away. And that put this book on my list. That got this book on my bad list for that reason. Number 3. I know this is going to be a favorite of some people for the year. And this I read for the BookTube prize. And it is Blackouts by Justin Torres, originally published in 2023. This has won a major award or two. And it is the story of two gay men having a conversation. It's not clear that they are lovers or where they are, but it's the conversation about their gayness, essentially. And a book that one of the characters' relatives helped write. It is a study of medicine and homosexuality. But all sorts of references are blacked out in that text. And if I were to hold up a copy, you would see a line of text and then some blacked out text. Very inventive in a way, but it made it very difficult to read. And my big problem with this book is that Justin Torres wanted to be profound. He wanted to make an important statement about being gay. And essentially, he was proselytizing, in my humble opinion. And I don't take well to proselytizing in fiction, and the fact that he was just trying so hard to make a point. And it hit home with a lot of people that agreed with that point. And that's where the problem is. I think this is a book that if you agree with his stance on social justice, let's just say, you'll like this book. But if you want something a little more nuanced, not going to cut it. Number 2, also read for the BookTube prize, Invitation to a Banquet, the story of Chinese food by Fuscha Dunlop. This is the story about Chinese food, how it was developed, and how you cook it. Now, I am not a foodie. I have gone out to my Chinese restaurant or two and had a very good meal. But it is not my go-to cuisine. It's a good cuisine, but not my go-to cuisine. And in this book, the author, who is a British woman, clearly loves and adores Chinese culture and Chinese food. But the food that she describes in these chapters, and there's like 20 chapters, and in every chapter, she's always describing all the dishes as delicious. Every chapter, delicious, is mentioned more than once. And some of the foods that she described, in my humble opinion, I would not eat if I hadn't had a meal in 2 weeks. Sorry, did not sound delicious to my inexperienced Caucasian middle-aged man tastes. So I did not favor that book. Now, a lot of people who are foodies are probably going to get really into that book because it gives rather in-depth description of food. And if you want to know one of the dishes that I would never eat, that would be stag pizzle soup. If you don't know what a pizzle is, it is the male genital organ. And I guess you cut them off stags and cook them up in a bowl of soup. Number 1 most disliked book of the year so far was another BookTube Prize nomination. And again, I can think of one or two other booktubers who I'm friends with who really enjoyed this book. And that was Loved and Missed by Susie, Boydt. This was originally published in 2023 in the UK and is the story of a UK grandmother. Her daughter has issues in life. She is a heroin addict and essentially homeless for a lot of her life. And this narrator essentially takes in the granddaughter to raise her on her own. It actually read a little bit like a kidnapping, but she was doing it with her heart in her hand and lots of good intentions. And it's a story of how a grandmother can raise her granddaughter with love. And these type of stories, which are essentially just family stories, again, really don't float my boat. They are not my cup of tea. Okay, you love your granddaughter. Good for you. It's really not an interesting story from my point of view. The novel was written well enough. She has a clear and easy style. But the story, if it had not been for the BookTube Prize, first of all, I never would have picked it up. And if I had picked it up, it clearly would have been a DNF, probably by the third or fourth chapter. And that is my judgment for bad books. It is not surprising that I did not choose any of these books myself. They were either for the book club or the BookTube Prize. So it's really not too astounding that they made it to the bottom of my list, because these are not books that I would have chosen on my own. So take that with a grain of salt about how harsh I am being for them. For the good books, at number 5, I'm picking Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky, published in 2021. This is just an exciting science fiction space opera. There were a lot of other contenders for the 5th place, but I decided to put it here because in many ways it is an opposite of Blackout by Justin Torres. Justin Torres wanted to be profound. Adrian Tchaikovsky just says, I'm writing a fun science fiction adventure story. Go with it. And I went with it. I really enjoyed it. It is part of a trilogy. I have the second part of the trilogy already read. Not quite as good as the first, but pretty darn good enough. And I have the third book queued up to read next month, or maybe the month after. Number 4, Rhinoceros by Eugène Ionesco, originally published in 1959. This is a very famous absurdist play. It is sort of set near the Franco regime, where people are suddenly turning into a rhinoceros. And there's this astounding belief. It's like, why would a normal person suddenly turn into a rhinoceros? And that is because these people are being influenced by the political system. They are accepting fascism as a way of life. And in this absurdist play, when you do that, you become a rhinoceros. And the reason I really liked this is because it is very relevant to our day and age, here and now, in the United States in the year of 2024. We have a lot of people who have turned into a rhinoceros in the United States. And more people should get out and realize that your neighbor is a rhinoceros, or your mother is a rhinoceros, or your father is a rhinoceros. Read this play. It's really good and really, truly relevant. Number 3, Carpenter's Gothic by William Gaddis. 1985 is when it was published. This is my third novel that I have read by Gaddis. It is probably in third place for his novels, but I still found this book immensely satisfying. Gaddis is an acquired taste. You just don't want to go in his book expecting a normal novel in a normal style. And in this story, it is of a man and a wife. They are living somewhere in New England. They are trying to start a family. There has been an incident in the husband's life where he had a bit of a plane accident, and he is blaming that plane accident on a lot of his problems. And it's about a lawsuit. It is about the people who own the home. And it just travels into many different directions. And while you're reading this book, you'll hear a character give a speech, and you know that character is not telling the whole truth. And it is up to the reader to uncover what is going on behind this dialogue. Because Gaddis is very fond of using long monologues in his dialogue. I find it fascinating, but again, it's an acquired taste that will not fit everyone's reading desires. Number 2, From Hell by Alan Moore, originally published in 1989. This is a graphic novel about Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper is one of those great mysteries that are in this world. Everyone wants to know who was Jack the Ripper, because that mystery has never been solved. And while there is a storyline in From Hell about who Jack the Ripper was, it is almost certainly completely fiction. But go with that, because Alan Moore tells an exciting story of why Jack the Ripper is out murdering prostitutes. It's just not necessarily because he's psychologically unhinged, and he is psychologically unhinged, of course, but there is method to his madness. And he may be taking orders from someone else who may be a little upset that he's murdering prostitutes, but it's good to cover up a scandal. And that's all I'm going to say. It is also kind of helpful if you have read Hawksmoor by Peter Ackroyd, which is another fabulous novel, because that novel sort of kind of features a little bit in From Hell, and that it made me enjoy From Hell just a little bit more, having that background novel in my mind. And number 1, favorite book of the year so far. Now, if you are a judge for the BookTube prize, and you are going to be judging nonfiction, I suggest to you that you stop this video right now, because I'm playing my hand just a little bit. I know I'm not really supposed to talk about the BookTube prize, why books are still being judged, and I will try to keep it at least a little bit down. But if you're judging that category, see you later. There's not going to be much after I finish talking about this book. And my favorite book of the year so far is King, A Life by Jonathan Eig. This is a biography of Martin Luther King, and it's a very well-balanced biography. Eig does not try to present King as this unimpeachable man. King certainly had his many flaws, and perhaps his flaws even helped project his greatness even further, because a good man can do some bad things. And he takes a look at King's life in a way that just totally drew me in. He is a good biographer because he tells a good story about King's life. And he makes you concerned about this man. And he also makes it quite clear that we do not know that much about King that's taught in our secondary school system. I learned a little bit about him when I was in elementary school, maybe a little bit in high school, but everyone should get to know the real Martin Luther King, which you will in this book. And again, I totally enjoyed this book. I really liked it. It is still currently on the list being judged, and if I am not mistaken, it will pass on to the final round, and I hope to be a judge in that final round. It's going to have some stiff competition, but it's still going to be competition because I'll have to judge each book on its own merits and rank them accordingly. Well, anyway, that is my judgment for the first half of 2024. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.